This is Travis Miller with your Yielding Minutes. Today's topic is going to be about corn rootworm. It's certainly a pest that has evolved into a bigger issue over the last couple of years and something that we need to try to control into the future. So I want to cover some topics about controlling rootworms to the best of our ability and with different modes of actions. So what we're trying to do is protect this root system that would have the potential of higher yields for us and prevent a disaster from happening and having a terrible rootworm issue. So what we first need to talk about is how do we protect this root mass from larvae feeding. And the number one control deal that we can do, something that we've kind of put by the wayside over the last 5 or 7 years, is soil applied insecticide, whether it be in furrow, T-band, or both. With the insecticides, we basically have two primary modes of action, or insecticides that we can use: an organophosphate and a pyrethroid. We need to take into the effect that we probably need to rotate those every couple years, so we throw different modes of action at the corn rootworm so we don't build up a resistance. With the resistance to Roundup and resistance to some of the trait packages, this is something that's going to be terribly important into the future, that we make sure we don't build a resistance to our insecticides and we continue to rotate and throw different modes of action. The rootworm is very, very good at adapting to what we're throwing at it and building resistance, so we need to rotate. So with that soil applied insecticide, what we're trying to do is kill as many larvae as we possibly can without any rootworm feeding or root damage. When we start having some feeding, it causes an injury point in which the corn plant quite possibly could lose a little yield capability. The other thing it can do is allow an injury point for diseases to move into the corn plant and affect the yield capability of it in that fashion. Second, we need to also take into consideration of always having some trait packages out there. Yes, there's some issues with some of the trait packages, but what we really need to do is still keep them out there for another mode of action to throw at the rootworm. Whether it be a VT3 Pro Rib, a Smart Stacks, straight Herculex, or a Durcade type of product, we need to make sure that we have a trait package out there. We need to make sure that we kind of rotate those a little bit here and there, and making sure that number one, we have the right genetic package out there, but number two, that we have a really good trait package out there. So we have the soil applied insecticide after the rootworms, we have a trait package to back it up a little bit, and then ultimately, as we mature into a plant that's tasseled and starting to silk, we have to watch out for that beetle population on two aspects. One aspect would be for silk clipping, the other aspect would be an egg laying population for next year's corn crop, or corn crop 2 years down the road. And what we want to do there is intensive scouting as far as rootworm beetles go. One is we don't want more than or less than an inch of silks clipped, or 2 to 3 beetles per plant. That would justify a spraying of aerial or ground to take care of the rootworm beetles. But more importantly for the next year's crop is to try to knock down as many female beetles as we possibly can. Now the male beetle will be the first one that comes out, and then a couple weeks down the road, depending on how our weather patterns are going, we're going to start seeing the females emerge. And what we want to do is watch for those female beetles, watch for when they start becoming impregnated and getting close to egg laying, and we can be most effective when we can start spraying aerial or ground applications of insecticides when we have pregnant egg laying beetles out there. And so those are some common things that as we rotate them, use 2 out of the 3, 3 out of the 3, certainly not 1 out of the 3. I think we can start bringing these populations back into control and taking a look at being able to still produce high yielding corn on corn. One other thing that I don't want to lose aspect of is in really tough situations is the possibility of throwing a bean crop in there. Now the western corn rootworm variant is something that might take that out of effect eventually down the road, where they are laying eggs into the soybean crop for the next year's corn crop. So that's something we got to keep our eye on too. That's why I think it's still important to utilize the soil applied insecticide on first year corn. So these are some aspects and some things to think about and to utilize to control corn rootworm. And this is Travis Miller with your Yielding Minutes.